Jenny Levy from Carolina Women's Lacrosse. Not only are they the national champions, they're the undefeated national champions. Jones, what are they?
A wagon. It's certified. They're a wagon.
Certified wagon.
Sweet. Wood panels. I get the wood panels
that's
on
up to
it?
the wagon owner gets to choose what the wagon looks
family
like.
vacation. Yeah.
Just the wagon keeps rolling. There's no stopping a wagon. You guys are a wagon.
Congratulations on all of the above. What have these last few days been like for you?
Thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. Obviously, good situation to be on for a good reason, but it's been awesome. We had such a young team and an experienced team together, and every game we went in like a little hungry and humble and not really sure like what the result would be. Next thing you know, we walked out with a nice victory over most of our opponents this season. And if someone told me you're going to go 22-0 and win a national championship this year, I would be like, wow, that's a hell of a year. And, I thought we might take a few losses in the season. We had set up the schedule to challenge us in different ways along the way. And, we made it through ACCs as a champion, the ACC tournament. And I thought, well, here we go. We're either going to go in the NCAA tournament and have a one loss on the season, or we're going to win the whole thing. So I like the latter. We won the whole thing.
As you mentioned, this was an incredibly young group. But in watching you guys didn't look young. It's not like there were a lot of these crazy mistakes that you're thinking, oh, it's just a bunch of youngsters out there. What allowed this team to play so maturely in your mind, even though it was so young?
I have, a lot of them have played at a really high level in high school and won state championships for their high schools. And, some of these guys have played on U.S. U20 teams, and I think they just had a really good connection to each other, and they were all kind of in the same boat. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't upperclassmen being like, you can't do that or you can't do that. They just went for it. They were totally fearless, and we really built our strategies this season and our style of play around what they naturally did. So we instead of trying to counteract who they were naturally as competitors, we're like, let's just embrace it and let them fly. And I think that gave them a lot of confidence.
How did you balance, as a coach, telling them how good they could be while also telling them as the wins piled up, you're still vulnerable?
Yeah, we really never thought about being undefeated. We really never talked about it. It was always just who our next opponent was. And we really stayed very true to, as I said, our tactical strategy and how we wanted to play. And we just continued to build upon the little things that made those things better. And so everyone was on the same page all year. Obviously, offense continues to evolve. It gets more creative. It gets more chemistry. And I thought different kids started stepping up to help support the Humphrey show, so to speak. And, I thought that we were super dynamic by the end of the year in all areas of the game, from our offense to the middle of the field with our face-off, and then obviously our defense.
Okay, I'm perusing your schedule to make sure I got this right. The two games against Boston College were pretty close. It was a one-goal game and a two-goal game. At Northwestern, who Carolina eventually beat in the national championship early in the season, that was a 3-goal game. Florida, who was the other Final Four team, that was a 5-goal win for the Tar Heels during the regular season. So the Final Four teams were somewhat close. Every other win was 10, 20, 8, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That's pretty dominant. Did that surprise you?
So we went into our first game of the season against James Madison, and last year we'd lost to them, I think, 19-17, but we gave up a lot of goals. And our one rule and one core belief for this season for defense is do not get scored on the first move of the game of their offense. And last year we gave up every first move. So I'm we started the fall, whoever we played in the fall, whatever the first move on their offensive end was, we're not giving up a goal on that. And that started the thing. And obviously how we played and the support, we played a lot of great team defense this year and a lot of extended out. We used our athleticism and that just became the thing. And so going into that JMU game, I was like, all right, we've totally changed our defense. I had a new defensive coach that came in, Kayla Wood, who played for me. We had started building this defense actually in June last year. Marie and I had worked on what we really wanted to look like, and then we started implementing it in the fall. And now here's January. I've got a new defensive coach, one of my alums who's young, and the two of us have been working together just to solidify what we really wanted. And we go in the JMU game. I'm like, okay, well, let's see if it works. And we held them 2 goals. And I'm thinking, okay, we might have something here. And that's an NCAA team. And I'm thinking, all right. And they have a player named Maddie Epke who's really good on the draw, and she's very good. She scored 8 goals against us the year before, and we held her to 0. And I'm thinking, And then 2 days later, we play at Liberty, and Liberty they won their conference, and they're a scrappy, tough team. And the game of lacrosse is funky sometimes, and you can give up goals on like silly little things, and like it's like a foul shot, the 8-meter, and we held them to 1 goal, and we played everybody in the game starting our third quarter. All of our starters were out, and everybody else on the bench was in. And we held them to 1 goal. And I'm thinking, all right. So we just gave up 3 goals in 2 games. This is pretty awesome. And then February, we saw Florida. We saw Syracuse. We eventually saw Virginia. And that just gave us more information that we were actually really good defensively. And we kept tweaking it, and we got better. But the defense anchored our team all year while our offense kind of got going.
When you're a coach, you make some sacrifices in terms of watching your kids play because you're busy coaching other people's kids. You've got 3 kids here playing lacrosse at Carolina right now, including Kate, who's on your national championship team. What'd you learn about coaching your kid this year and about your kid?
Yeah, she, I'd never coached Kate before. I coached the boys in basketball, like Chapel Hill Carver Rec.
Nice. I bet your team was a beast, were they?
Alan Bador and he was the head coach.
Wow, you could
Judge
legal man coach.
It was like full press.
Yeah. So
I would like to object to this foul shot.
It was, it's like 6s, the age 6 group. And Alan's like, do you want to help me coach? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, there's a couple rules. You have to play every player has to play in a game. I'm like, okay. He's like, and you cannot full court press. I'm like, okay. So we ran a 1-3-1 trap over the 50.
Yeah, half court trapping press.
Because
6-year-olds.
we ran a half court trap, and we figured that we probably couldn't score a lot from the outside, so we taught him how to dribble and score layups, and we went undefeated and made the local paper. And my assistant at the time goes, Jenny. He's like, of course you guys went undefeated. You're running a 1-3-1 trap with 6-year-olds. I'm like, yeah, and they loved it. And rec ball. I'm like, and he loved it. So we did that. I did that for I think like 4 years with the boys, but I never had Kate. It never worked out that I got to coach her in basketball, and she went up to Maryland for the last 2 years of high school. So I really pretty much let her drive her own train as far as like working with coaches who were coaching her, and obviously we worked separately when she was home, and all through our kids' lives we were out on the fields especially during COVID, we did a lot of work. So I'd never really coached her, and she's a good teammate. She's really tough. She's just a natural athlete. She understands time and score. She understands moments. There was, when you decide at the end of a game, like our BC game for ACCs, like who do you need? There was a timeout, like who do we want on our field? We're up by 1. We're up by 1, who do we want on our field? And it wasn't Kate was on the field. Kate knows how to make big plays in big moments. She scored the game winner in the ACC championship game going coast to coast, which I had no idea was the game winner. No idea that was 4 minutes left in the game. But when we finally took a command with 2-goal lead there, she's on the field in that situation. And we talked about it as a staff. Okay, go in the Final Four, end of game scenarios, who needs to be on the field on each end. Like if you're coming out of timeout, and she's a kid who's going to be on the field in those situations. She actually ended up with the ball in her stick in an interception at the very end of the championship game. But she's a hell of a competitor. She doesn't need to be the star. She's a trenches type kid, but she can make big plays both on the offensive and defensive end. And she works hard, and she's got a good summer in front of her where she's got to put some more tools in her tool belt, like all the other freshmen. And she's far from finished developing her own talents, but her freshman class this year had a huge impact on our team.
In relative terms, and this is all relative terms, last year was not one of Carolina's best seasons. There were also a ton of injuries that played a role in that. And you talked a little bit about this on the defense when you were talking about defense. But for someone who's had as much success as you have had, and you have a season, again, in relative terms, not up to what you want, do you try to take something out of that? Was that you go, you know what, my 4 or 5 best players were all hurt like that? How did you leave that season and kind of digest it and use it moving forward, if you did?
Oh, no. We manifested the fury of 1,000 Suns, 100%. Last year we had pretty much 8 of our starters on the bench by the end of the year. And, it was just it was a tough season, when every time you turn around, someone else is getting hurt. And then having to redo lineups and redo everything that you're doing. So we had to reset the standard of what success was last year by April. We had a field hockey player come in and help us for practice. We had a club player come in and help us for practice. So we were just down so many numbers, and it was just an unusual year. Yeah. And so success was like, all right, let's continue to build skill. Let's continue to play the best lacrosse we can. Let's enjoy practice. Let's enjoy being out here together, and let's have great chemistry. And as soon as the season was over, we started building for this year. And it started all summer. We had a leadership group that worked every 2 or 3 weeks with me about what do we want to feel like when we get back in August. We also, a lot of people celebrated on us last year. They won the national championship all year. Teams that had beaten us in 10 years, teams that had beaten us in 6 years. And listen, it was well earned, right? You beat people like that. They want to get the best of you when they can, and they want to punch you even harder when you're down. So we got punched pretty hard last year in a lot of different ways, whether it's on social media, just comments people made in stands. You don't listen, we're competitors. You don't forget any of that. We use that as fuel.
You're a little fired up about it right now. I can tell just talking about it.
So we started saving all the little things that people were putting out on the social media. The locker room was full of great stuff to pay back. And we had we wanted a cash register. I'll put this out there now because this is great.
You're an undefeated national champion. Let's go.
We had a cash register, an old school cash register that dings. One of our friends sent it to me. It was about 300 pounds. It's real. It's wood and steel and iron, and it has an old wood slot when you pull it out, and it goes ding. And we stuffed it with all the stuff from last year. And so all season we were like, yeah, another receipt to cash. So people might think, I don't think people think I'm that nice, but I'm definitely a wolf in sheep's clothing. If you don't think I'm competitive, you're crazy. So we went right after people's jugular this year, all season, and it was super fun.
Yeah.
If you ever beat Jenny Levy in anything, walk off the field quietly.
Yeah, that's right. Shake hands.
Say nothing.
That's right.
Or she'll get you back.
Yeah. I don't like to lose, but I do respect opponents and their efforts and their players. And I do, will say to the other coach, congratulations, good luck. And so many people will shake your hand when they win, but they can't look you in the eye and shake your hand when they lose. And so I try not to be that. And hopefully I'm not. Hopefully there's no one out there saying, well, she did that to me. But it was awesome. We were very humble, but we were really hungry. And there was not one opponent that we faced, whether you're ranked or unranked. There was not one person we faced that we didn't respect. And I said, listen, let's give them our respect and give us our best effort. And our best effort usually took care of business.
Who's somebody who had so much to do with this championship that you feel like not enough people know, whether that's a player or staff or family or someone else? Who's somebody you haven't gotten to talk about enough?
The staff that we work with is incredible. So my assistant, Marie McCool, played here and graduated in 2018. She did our offensive coordinator. Kayla Wood joined us in January. She became our defensive coordinator. And Maya Bartlett was our third assistant, who came from Denison coaching the men. So just my on-field staff was unbelievable. And then Corey Boyle, she's our director of ops. And she hustles for us. And we everything we need, she takes care of. She's a mom of 3, but she is a logistics genius and gets so much done. And then on the student athlete support side, our strength and conditioning coach, Jared Jarvie, and then our athletic trainer, Katie DeLude, those guys just put so much time in. They don't make enough money for how much work they do. And then our team doc, Dr. Wakus, who's been with us for almost as long as I've been here. She was a fellow when I got here. So I think she's in her 28th, 29th, 30th year as well. So I just feel very grateful. We got Jeremy last 6 weeks, and our social.
And you were able to overcome it.
I know, and our social media has popped, and obviously winning helps. But we're a sport that is one of many here that is so successful, and we loved watching women's soccer win. We love the success that field hockey's had. We love the success of women's basketball, tennis. We all pull for each other, and just we also don't always get all the resources that we need, like some of the other bigger sports, but we all make it work, and it's super fun. Carolina is so awesome, you guys. It's so fun to win here, and when everyone is winning, and I'm just so fired up to be a Tar Heel.
So we had all three of the Humphrey sisters in here with us in what, Adam, March maybe, somewhere in that time period. When you saw them, was it the first practice or something? You're like, oh yeah, when they were just all together. Even in here talking, you could tell the chemistry that they clearly had. I assume you saw that pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, Nicole was here first. She was part of our 22 national championship team and scored a big goal in that game. And then we knew Chloe was coming in, and we knew when Chloe was coming in, we had no idea that Ashley was going to 180. Graduate early from Stanford and be like, yeah, I'm going to spend 2 years at Carolina. We were like, whoa, okay. So, so now we have Ashley's coming in mid-year of Chloe's freshman year, and then Nicole had gone out to USC because she wanted to try out what the West Coast felt like, and ended up getting hurt, unfortunately for her, and then having an opportunity to come back. But so we had Ashley and Chloe for a year, and then Chloe was out, so they really never played together because Ashley wasn't here in the fall of Chloe's freshman year, and then Chloe gets hurt. So we hadn't seen Ashley and Chloe together on the field until this fall. And then Nicole came in, and she was still out this fall. So she was still recovering from her foot injury. So it really wasn't until January that most of our players, including the Humphreys, were healthy and starting to get back into play with us. And it was cool. They're very different players. Mm-hmm. They're different people, but they're also sisters. So there's some great dynamics that happen. And sometimes I'm not paying attention. I miss it. Someone will say, do you see those guys get after each other today? And then there's other times you'll see Nicole's kind of the peacemaker, and she'll be talking to Chloe and be showing her walking her through something. And Ashley's she's the one who's she's the general out there. She watches a ton of film. She's the master class of lacrosse from that perspective. And, it was fun to coach them. It was, they've worked hard, and they were a big part of our success this season without a doubt. And Chloe's just a phenom. I mean, I haven't coached anyone. I've coached a lot of talented players, but I haven't seen anyone like her.
So for someone who doesn't know the game like you do, what separates her?
So if you're looking at just a pure athletic talent, if you're looking at basketball or football or, any field sport, soccer, two-handedness. She can go right, left. You don't even know which hand's her dominant hand. She can if you're on a basketball court, she can pull up and shoot a three, or she can slice to the lane and get a layup. She can dish the ball. She can play low. She can play high. She can play anywhere. And then her relentlessness on when you don't have the ball. So her ability to ride, which is maybe press in basketball, she just puts people under a lot of pressure, whether she has the ball or you have the ball. Either way, you don't know what's going to happen. So she's constantly reading the game at a really high level and making decisions, both mentally and physically, that are probably 2 steps ahead of everybody else.
It seemed like people are trying to be physical with them later in the year. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think, people are going to go after Ashley because, she wants to feed the ball. So it's a little bit of a slower read because you're waiting for things to happen, and people are getting on her and things like that. And then people are going to try to be physical with Chloe because they can't stop her any other way. So, she's still learning how to read the slides. She got a lot better at it this, you can beat one. We always say beat one, see two. So you're going to beat your one. But if they're not gonna slide, then you're good. But if they're sliding, then you gotta read what's going on. So, they were super physical with them. Our game's really physical, and it's really you gotta be tough to play it.
Mm-hmm. Carolina Athletics has lost a fair amount of very important coaches these last few years to retirement. I wonder kind of what you've learned from that group, the Ansons and the Roy Williams and Karen Sheltons and people like that, Mike Fox, what you've learned from that group and what sense of obligation, I guess, you feel to sort of bring that along with you and teach others.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Roy and Anson were two of my biggest mentors as I came through here. And Roy was always so nice to me and give me his time. We came to practice. I think the story's been told a lot where we lost the 2012 some quarterfinal game up in Syracuse. And I was in Roy's office the next day, just a mess. I was so heartbroken that I failed my team. And he's like, you have to, if you believe in what you're doing, you have to stay the course. You're trying to be the top 1%, which is really hard to do. And you may never win one. And I looked at him like, Roy, coach, that's not okay. You
Maybe not today. Not the day to say that to me.
Like, you just want to know 5 and 09. Like, I'm not really okay with that statement. But my question to him was like, what was the biggest difference between his Kansas teams and his Carolina teams? Like, what was it that? Because he had so much talent at Kansas, and obviously I didn't follow Kansas as well as I would here, but he came in 2 years, won his first championship, and then 4 years later with Hansborough and those guys. Bobby Frazier, they win again, and I'm like, what is it? He's like, they love the game so much. Like they're like, we'll take care of our academics, we'll stay eligible, but we want to play. There's nothing distracting them from the game that they love, and he's like, that's really important. And I thought that was a really good tip for me, to stay my course and believe in what we're doing, because we had done a lot of work, we just hadn't like tipped over. He's like, eventually the door will fall down. And sure enough, in 13, we win our first championship in 5 overtimes, and the door fell down. And it was, we were not expected to win. Maryland was really stacked that year. They were undefeated, and we came back and took that from them. So that was Roy. And then Anson, I've studied Anson since the day I walked in there. His office had always been next to mine. So I came to I went to all of his practices. And I wasn't as curious about the soccer piece, but I was really curious about the mentality that he talks about, his competitive culture, and like what words and language did he use with his team. Not just like what their setup was, but I wanted to hear the mentality piece, because I'd never really had that opportunity to be coached like that. So, Anson has been, for my 30 years here, my biggest mentor. And when he said he was retiring, I cried, because I was like, oh my God, how can you be retiring? But I called him all through my career. When something happened, I'd be so pissed that, we'd get back to a Final Four and my players would like get in a car on the day off and drive up to Navy to see boyfriends and drive back. And I'd be like, oh my God, we're leaving on Wednesday for the Final Four. We hadn't made it we had made it for the first time since 2002. And my whole senior classes, like 8 of them drove up to Navy 5 hours and drove 5 hours back to see about a boy. And I'm thinking, what the actual, And I call Anson and I'm like, smoke is coming out of my ears. And he's like, listen, you got to soak it. You can't say anything. And I'm like, all right, it's going to take me a lot not to say anything. And he's like, just if you lose on Friday, then you say something. But if you win on Friday, you soak it. And I'm like, okay, well, we win on Friday. And I never said anything to him. We got our butts kicked on Sunday in the national championship in 2009 against Northwestern, by the way. And so it was a little revenge this past weekend. I hadn't forgotten. Yeah. So, Anson was just always there to just talk through any weird situation that was happening. Because, you're coaching women. I had 38 women, they're complicated creatures. And they're lovely creatures, and they're smart, and they're hardworking, and they want to please, and they're incredible. But there's sometimes that you just want to like wring their necks. So, so he's just been a guide for me, and just amazing.
I feel like it's so funny because Ginny Levy is in no way like old, but you have been the only coach that's ever been here, and you've been here for a while. So I asked this in saying, like, I feel like you're like one of the elder statesmen of the sport, even though maybe that isn't true. But in my mind, it feels that way. Where do you think the health of the sport is, both at the college level and kind of maybe on that national level? You hear a lot about it on the men's side. Where are we on the women's side?
Yeah, we're working really hard to try to change rules. You know, we have our first ever Olympic inclusion in 28 in LA, which is really exciting. It's the sixes though. So for people who don't know, like rugby, in order to get into the Olympics, had to go rugby sevens, I think. Mm-hmm. And for lacrosse, we play 12 on 12 on the women's side on the field game. But to get into the Olympic Village with the number of athletes and the caps on that, we had to create another game. So we created an Olympic sixes. And so it's fun, it's exciting, it moves, it plays in an hour and a half. Your rosters are like 10 plus 2 extras. So that's not a lot. So, but you can see why that works in the Olympic setting. And then the field sport, just, we don't play in 2 hours. A lot of people don't know our rules. There are officials. We have a really big problem with like the number of officials and creating newer, younger officials. And we really just need a hard reset in the women's side to really clean up and take advantage of where we are right now. We had 14,000 people watching the game on Sunday. That was a record for us. Gillette Stadium in Foxborough was a really great experience for our student athletes. It's a little bit big of a venue. I think the men had 24,000 maybe. The sport is growing, but you have to latch onto it now to make sure it continues. And, I'm part of a group that's working as an overall, like, many constituents are going into this to say, okay, what do the rules need to be? How do we need to reorganize officials? How do we grow the sport from the grassroots to the middle school, to the high school, to college, to the international game? And what's the consistency in that? So I'm part of that. I'm very passionate about that. And, we need to do better, actually. We need to do better. We're not thriving right now because we don't have enough coaches. We don't have enough officials. But the sport and the players that are playing it are incredibly talented. And they're exciting to watch, and they're great role models. And they're all going to go on to do something maybe other than their sport because it's not a professional sport right now. But we're getting there. I'm pretty passionate about it. I'm not as popular because I tell people truths, but it is truths and it is real. And with all the changes in the NCAA going on right now, you have to position your sport to be relevant. And I think that lacrosse has to do a better job.
I think there are some Carolina fans who are rightfully a little frustrated with college sports currently with some of the things that are going on. But hearing you talk and hearing the Humphrey sisters who we had in here this year, some of your other players who we've had in here, I think when they hear that, they go, oh, that's college sports. I recognize that. Make your pitch for why, if someone is feeling a little disconnected from college sports, they need to come watch Carolina women's lacrosse.
100%. It's we don't have huge budgets for NIL. We're not paying players because they might go somewhere else. And that's not a slight on what's happening at the revenue sport level. It's just that's not our reality. It is a little bit. I think there is some pay for play, but come out and watch us. You're going to see really hard workers. You're going to see really great talent. You're going to see young women that are students too, who are really smart in the classroom, great athletes. They bring an energy and a joy to the game that they play. That is so wholesome, and it is a little bit of a throwback to what it used to be across the board.
All right, now Adam and I have forgotten to do this the last couple of guests, but I have remembered it.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Okay. Don't worry that I'm just digging under the table. You are going to be the first recipient.
What an honor.
Of our jalapeno pimento cheese Piedmont Pennies. Have you ever had a Piedmont Penny?
No.
Okay, proud sponsor here on the podcast. Would you like to try one right now?
I'll try one.
Okay, I like this.
I like anything spicy.
All right, this bag is for you.
Okay.
Born in a business school class as a project.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is a business school
and now it's a business.
Okay.
Becca was here.
They've been on Shark Tank. That's how legit they are.
Oh, okay.
But it didn't air
so
because
people should be investing in them, or we're not sure.
Well, they should certainly be eating them.
Okay.
Don't forget promo
ready?
Code HEELS on your first order and free shipping.
Piedmont Pennies, PENNIES for people that are listening.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Jalapeno pimento cheese.
Yeah. This is Southern Delight.
It's a baked biscuit bite.
Yeah.
All right, here
that's
we go.
right.
are good.
Good?
Yeah.
Like maybe have a little wine with your friends, have some Piedmont Pennies on the table.
If you are into making charcuterie boards, this would be a great accoutrement to the charcuterie board.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Let's not use any words that Jones and I don't know. I thought we made that deal before we started. That's something we tell guests before we go.
Okay, last thing. We'll let you wash down your Piedmont Penny there before we let you go.
Coach Levy's going to stay cheesing the rest of the day.
Oh, she's going to stay cheesing, there's no doubt.
My golf game today is going to be a little fiery now.
Oh, yeah.
I had a jalapeno
There you go.
pimento cheese biscuit.
I mean, 4 national titles, right? Do these get, I don't want to say old, but I mean, is it still special every time you do it now?
It 100% special because of the players and the people that you're working with to do it together. The journey is what's special. All the moments in between, the bus rides, the locker room, before and after games, the laughs, the individual jokes. There's always a couple songs that each team decides that they love, and but it's never old because it's a new group of faces doing something that they love. And for me, it doesn't really matter, but for them, I mean, it does matter to me, but it's more about them, and realizing a dream and knowing that you can work really hard for something and be a good teammate and show up every day to be your best, even on days where it's hard to be your best, and win a national championship. And it's something that they'll savor forever and always be considered a national championship. So if it gets old and redundant, I should be out. You can't stay if that's the case, which I don't feel that way. I feel very, very energized. I have been on fire all year. It's been great.
Cha-ching.